You send 20 product shots through Seedream, then switch to Nano Banana for a quick edit pass, and the outputs look like they came from completely different creative directors. Same brief, totally different aesthetic DNA. Nano Banana is Google's conversational, iterative image model. Seedream is ByteDance's photorealism first generator. The real question is whether you're generating or iterating, and that answer decides everything. Okay, test 1, output quality. A freelance art director needs a single hero shot for a campaign launch. 1 prompt, no retrees. If the model's raw output is weak, she's burning hours on manual fixes before the client call at 9 a.m. And that's the real cost of picking the wrong model for generative work, which is exactly where the Arena ELO score actually matters. I pulled up the Artificial Analysis Image Gen Arena leaderboard, and the scores are right there on screen. Seedream 4.0 at 0.72, Nano Banana at 0.71. That's a 0.01 gap on a normalized win rate ALO scale, real but narrow. Community consensus on newer generations backs this up too, consistently calling Seedream the stronger single-shot photorealism pick, while Nano Banana reads cleaner and more commercial. Seedream takes output quality, and I didn't expect the margin to be this clean, given how close the scores look on paper. But community signals across newer model generations kept pointing the same direction. That puts Seedream up 1-0, and it earns that lead on raw generative punch alone. I live inside these tools every day, so I catch the gaps the spec sheets skip. Drop a comment if the photorealism versus commercial aesthetic split has ever sent your workflow sideways. Test 2, generation speed. You're running a rapid prototyping session, 20 image variants, back to back, trying to nail a direction before the team meeting. Every extra second per image is compounding dead time, and at 20 rounds, that adds up fast. The question is whether Nano Banana's speed advantage is real enough to actually change how that session feels. Put the stopwatches side by side, and here's what you get. Nano Banana clocks roughly 8 seconds per 190p image. Seedream comes in around 10 seconds, so that's about 20% faster, and across a 20-image session, you're saving roughly 40 seconds. I'll be straight with you. 40 seconds sounds small, but that latency friction compounds across dozens of rounds, and it's a real workflow comfort difference. Nano Banana takes generation speed, and I ran the numbers twice, because the gap felt smaller than the community noise around it. But 2 seconds per image is 2 seconds per image, and it compounds. That ties the overall score at 1 each, and Nano Banana earns it on pure latency. One of the biggest problems I run into when using AI agents is turning their output into YouTube content I can actually use to market my product. That's why this video is sponsored by Subscriber, a tool that helps business owners connect their AI agents to YouTube and market their products without spending 10 hours every week creating content. You can connect Claude or ChatGPT directly to Subscriber. It then analyzes your business, website, and YouTube channel to help you create SEO-optimized video ideas, scripts, thumbnails, and even complete videos that actually match your brand. What I like most is that every week, Subscriber gives me a list of high-potential video ideas I can immediately execute, and it can even help edit videos for me, with or without my face, including videos like the one you're watching right now. It's easy to get started, and you can try Subscriber for free using the link in the description below. Now back to the video. Test 3, pricing and credits. You're scoping a project budget, and you assume one of these models is going to be cheaper, so you build your cost estimate around that assumption. If you're wrong, the invoice lands weird. The number on screen right now is the same for both models, which is honestly not what most people expect to see. I checked both APIs directly, Nano Banana on Google Gemini API, Seedream 4.0 on FAL.ai, and both land at exactly 0.039 per 1 MP image. No pricing edge at paid scale, that's a genuine measured tie. Where it gets more interesting is free tier access. Nano Banana has a documented free tier at 5 RPM and 1,000 images per day on Google AI Studio, and I couldn't find a published equivalent for Seedream 4.0. So the per image cost is identical at paid scale, which makes this a tie on unit economics. But the free tier gap is real, and it matters if you're evaluating before you commit. 1,000 images a day to experiment with Nano Banana for free versus paying from image 1 with Seedream. For anyone prototyping a new workflow, that accessibility difference is the actual deciding factor at this stage. Pricing is a tie at paid API scale, and I genuinely didn't expect both models to land at the exact same number. But there it is, identical per image either way. The score stays at 1 apiece with 1 tied, And the only practical edge here goes to Nano Banana's free tier for anyone not yet on a paid plan. Alright, so we've got a tied scoreboard and 2 tests still to go. Style control and platform availability. Style control is the one that could actually separate these models for creative workflows, because if Seedream holds art styles better from a reference image, that changes the whole conversation about which model you reach for when the brief gets specific. Stay sharp. Test 4. Style control and consistency. A brand designer hands the model a reference illustration and needs every output to stay faithful to that painting style across a whole series. If the model drifts after the second or third image, the whole series falls apart and she's rebuilding from scratch. And that's one of the most common complaints I hear from people running iterative creative pipelines. When I dug into the community data, the pattern was pretty consistent. Seedream 5 Pro preserves source illustration styles where Nano Banana 2 reportedly struggles to hold the painting style across edits. That's a directional signal from newer releases, rather than a measured head-to-head on the exact versions here. So I'd weight it accordingly. But the pattern showed up often enough that I'm confident calling it Seedream wins on reference image style fidelity. Seedream takes style control, and I went in thinking Nano Banana's conversational interface would offset the style fidelity gap. But community consensus on illustration preservation was too consistent to argue with. That puts Seedream ahead 2-1 with 1 tied, and the lead is built on reference image fidelity. Test 5. Platform availability and limits. You're building on Google Cloud and you need your image model to integrate cleanly with the rest of your stack. If the model you picked lives on 3 different third-party platforms with no centralized rate limit documentation, you're spending engineering hours just figuring out where the ceiling is before you write a single line of production code. I went through both documentation setups and the gap is real. Nano Banana lives natively on Google AI Studio and the Gemini API, with rate limits centrally documented right on ai.google.dev. 5 RPM free and paid limits clearly stated. Seedream 4.0 runs across FAL.ai, Replicate, and Byte Plus, and the rate limits vary by platform, with no single published source covering all 3. For Google Stack teams, Nano Banana's native integration is a genuine structural advantage. Nano Banana takes platform availability, and I didn't expect the documentation clarity gap to be this pronounced, but Seedream's fragmented multi-platform setup genuinely complicates production planning. That ties the overall score at 2 each with 1 tied, which means the whole decision really does come down to how you work. Nano Banana is the clear pick for iterative workflows, 20% faster per image at 8 seconds versus 10, a documented free tier at 1,000 images per day. On Google AI Studio, native Google Cloud, and Vertex AI integration with centrally documented rate limits. And community consensus picks it for multi-turn character and product consistency across a series. Seedream is the clear pick for generative quality work. It holds the top arena ELO at 0.72 on Artificial Analysis's Image Gen Leaderboard. Community consensus consistently names it the stronger single-shot photorealism option. It preserves source illustration styles more faithfully than Nano Banana, and its cinematic dramatic defaults are a better fit for editorial and high-impact creative briefs. If you're generating, go Seedream. If you're iterating, go Nano Banana. The price is identical at €0.39 per image either way, so the only thing left to decide is whether you need 1 great shot or 20 good ones in a row. One thing the docs don't spell out, Seedream 4.0's rate limits actually vary per platform, so File.ai, Replicate, and Byte Plus each enforce different ceilings with no single published source covering all 3. If you hit a wall mid-batch on one platform and switch to another expecting the same limits, you'll get a different number, so budget extra time to test your actual ceiling before you commit to production. Now, if you want to see how Nano Banana actually stacks up against a completely different generation architecture, I did a full breakdown in Nano Banana versus Flux, which is better, and the quality gap there is a lot less obvious than you'd think. That one's worth watching next.